Hello and welcome to We Love History Live. My name is Rachel and today we're bringing you a Doors Open Day special live stream. Doors Open Day has gone virtual this year, but there are still lots of opportunities for you to access historic buildings and find out more about their history. And today is also Heritage Awareness Day, so we're glad you're here with us to talk heritage. Today we're diving into the history of Trinity House Maritime Museum in Leith. Once the base of the incorporation of mariners and shipmasters, Trinity House is an elegant situated on Leith historic Kirkgate. It has an outstanding collection of maritime treasures, which we're looking forward to telling you all about. As always, this is a Q&A session, so if you'd like to ask us a question, you can do so on Facebook or via YouTube, for which you'll need to log in with a Google account, and we'll try to answer as many of your questions as we can during the stream. So I'm joined today by my colleague Adam Gorrich, who is the house manager of Trinity House. Adam is very much the face of Trinity House, and so today we're going to give you something of a virtual tour around the building and show you the collection, as well as answer any questions you might have for us. So Adam, welcome.
Hello.
So Adam, while we're waiting for questions to come in, why don't you tell us exactly what is Trinity House?
Yes, Trinity House was established in the 14th century as a fraternity of ship owners and shipmasters. It was set up in 1380 as a charity to care for old and sick in Leith. This was obviously long before any state aid was available. Money was given to seafarers who could no longer support themselves, and to women and children left behind by those who had lost their life at the sea or who had been captured. Some beneficiaries were housed at Trinity House here. When the old almshouse was being renovated in the 1700s, 6 women were living in the house. It was just one of several organizations those days, or guilds established in the time. And Trinity House, actually, the coat of arms of Trinity House, which you can probably see now, is still used today. The translation actually is in Latin, and it means, in loose translation, the land, the sea, and the stars are conquerable by men of virtue and men of courage. And you can see actually 1380, this is the date when organization was established. Today, the property is under care of Historic Environment of Scotland, previously Historic Scotland, and the house and its contents were handed over to Historic Scotland in 2004. And since then, we have been taking care of it, of the objects, and provided tours to the public. Although the house is in care of Historic Environment Scotland, the masters, mariners still meet here, and at the same time, it is still, as you can imagine, working building up to some extent. There are currently around 20 members, masters of the house, and the current master of the house, main person, is Captain Stuart Lee. He became the new master in 2016. So this is just a short introduction.
So how did Trinity House make this money that they would use to provide the assistance to sailors and their families and the mariners who are in need?
Well, as this was, so to speak, very multifunctional organization, they had a couple of different sources of income. Originally, the money for the charity came from the members themselves. However, in 1532, King James VI gave Trinity House the power to levy a tax called the Prime Guild. So this gave members the right to collect up to 12 Scots pennies per ton from ships entering or leaving the port of Leith. So you can imagine this was quite big income for them. Following a series of disputes over the payments, in 1566, Mary Queen of Scots confirmed the right of the incorporation to collect payments, ratifying the guild foundation, erection, and institution of the hospital and of the Prime Guild. So this was really the time when they had lots of money from the taxes, basically. Refusal to pay would result in the confiscation of the sails or anchors. An additional voluntary contribution called Crown Mark collected. Trade was largely conducted over the North Sea with the Nordic and Baltic regions, and Low Countries and France. Occasionally, actually, it was down to the Portugal, Spain, The funds raised by the Prime Guild and Crown money were then used for the relief of the sick, the poor, and the widows and orphans of lost or captured mariners, and to care for aged mariners as well. The masters and mariners of Trinity House in the Caregate was the oldest, and it became later the wealthiest of the trade guilds operating in Leith, in this area. Since then, this was one of the major incomes for the growing organization, the Prime Guild. After Prime Guild was abolished, and this happened in 1862, Trinity House had to depend on property income. They had quite a lot of properties in Trinity area. Trinity area in Edinburgh is called after this house, after the masters. So they had, after the Prime Guild was abolished, they had this money from the rents, so they could meet its pension payments and other commitments. Another major income was money collected from the pilotage certificates. At this point, some of you might be wondered actually what is exactly a sea pilot, maritime pilot. So just shortly, sea pilot is a mariner who maneuvers through ships, maneuvers ships through dangerous and congested waters, such as harbors. They are navigational experts possessing special knowledge of the particular waterway, such as its depth, current, hazards, as well as being experts in handling ships all of sizes and types. As you can imagine, they would know the local rocks as well. Maritime pilot is also an expert and ship handler who is licensed and authorized by a recognized pilotage authority. And Trinity House was this major organization. They would issue the pilotage certificates. And every 2 years, as far as we know, up to 19th century, each pilot had to come back to Trinity House to extend his certificate, basically. And so you can imagine this was quite good and prominent source of income. And here on this picture, you can see the Russian Tsar actually landing in the port of Leith, and this happened in 1896. And at this opportunity, actually, because this was his larger tour around Scotland, and he came to the port of Leith, and at this opportunity, actually, the Trinity House masters were requested by the Russians to provide the pilots to pick him from Copenhagen, from Denmark. So our pilots, Trinity House pilots, had to go all the way through the North Sea to take the Russian Tsar actually to the port of Leith, so which is rather really interesting thing.
And some of the masters today are pilots still, aren't they?
Yeah, there are around, I would say, we have around 20 members, I think slightly more now, as they recruited a couple of new members past years. And I would say 3 or 4 of our actual masters are still the pilots in the port of Leith here, so they are still active. And Captain Lee, by the way, who is the current master of the house, he used to be a pilot in the port of Leith as well, until he retired a couple of years ago. Yeah.
So the Prime Guild and the Crown money, they were used to help the poor and their families in times of need. But Trinity House did other types of work and had other responsibilities as well, didn't it? And we've mentioned pilotage. What other kind of things did it do?
Yeah, one of the most important things besides the pilotage and actually Prime Guild were the lighthouses. Actually, they were very involved with the lighthouses. In the 17th century, actually, Trinity House was receiving licht money from ship owners, which was used to maintain lights in the fort. So by collecting this licht money, light money in translation, by the 17th century, they were maintaining primitive coal-fired lights in the fort. And in the 19th century, Trinity House was involved in the planning and founding of new and more reliable lighthouses that took advantage of improvements in technology. And this included, among others, like Bellrock Lighthouse, Fidra Lighthouse, and Isle of May Lighthouse. They also lobbied for lighthouses, including mentioned already the Bellrock Lighthouse in 1810. And at this opportunity, we might stop slightly on the Bellrock Lighthouse. Also, we have this picture now of the model, actually, of the Yeah, in the convening room, yeah, upstairs, yeah. And this is rather interesting, actually, lighthouse. The Ballot Lighthouse of the coast of Angus in Scotland is the world's oldest sea-washed lighthouse, and also actually, it was built between 1807 and 1810 by Robert Stevenson. He was the grandfather, as you know, of Robert Louis Stevenson. And they built it actually on the Bell Rock, also known as Inchcape, in the North Sea, 11 miles east of the Firth of Tay. And standing 35 meters tall, it is visible from inland, actually, about 56 kilometers from inland. And the masonry work on which the lighthouse rests was constructed to such high standard that it has not been replaced or adapted or changed in 200 years. And it's worth to mention also, if you look at this lighthouse, and whoever has seen it actually live, basically, the lighthouse served as a blueprint for many of these type lighthouses around the world. So if you ever look at some of the lighthouses around the coast of just in the country, really, and they were made actually in sort of half of 19th century, something like that. They were well designed on a sort of similar pattern, actually, as a Bellrock Lighthouse served as sort of blueprint for other lighthouses around the world. So this was really revolutionary work, actually, to build the lighthouse right on the rock, just in the middle of the sea, and it looks really fantastic when the water goes up. Actually, it covers sort of 20% of the lighthouse, actually, so it looks sometimes like coming out of the sea.
And this painting that we can see on the screen now is by Turner, and this was commissioned by Robert Stevenson for his book, An Account of the Bellrock Lighthouse, which we also have a copy of in the collection.
Yeah.
So another kind of service that Trinity House provided was nautical training to mariners. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this was in fact very interesting, as they were really they started the training really for Scotland and for you know, not just for the Leith but for Scotland really in 1680, funded by fees and by levy on Leith shipmasters. The masters and mariners appointed a professor to teach the mathematics and navigation to the sons and apprentices of shipmasters. Concerned to improve safety at the sea, Trinity House established the first formal nautical training in the country and licensed mentioned earlier pilots for the fort and around Scottish coast, actually. So as a result of the requirement for formal qualification stipulated in the Merchant Seamen Act 1844, in 1855, Trinity House and other Leith organizations founded the Leith Navigational School, also called the Government Navigational School. And new building was opened in 1903 in Leith, and the name was changed to very famous in its days, Leith Nautical College. And I would say most of the local people here involved with the sea, who went on the sea, and also most of our captains went through the college, actually. So this was really important to mention also. And the boys' courses were taught on the training ship Dolphin, and you can see actually this now with quite a few photographs, actually how they were trained on the Dolphin. So quite, I would say, 90% of the masters who were members of the house here, they would go through Dolphin, through this ship really. And I have to mention, we have quite a lot of visitors who visit the house, Trinity House, and they become quite emotional. And we had a gentleman some time ago who even recognized actually himself on the photograph, which you can see actually here now. And the thing about the college is actually in 1983, Scottish Educational Department reviewed nautical education in Scotland, and the decision was made to close the college and transfer naval education to what is now Glasgow College. So students' records were transferred as well, and quite a lot of objects. If you had ever some opportunity to visit Trinity House, or you will have this opportunity in the future, so you'd see upstairs in the convening room actually quite quite a few of our objects belong to the Leith Nautical College, and they were actually donated by the professors of the college when it ceased to exist in 1987. It moved actually to Jewel-esque at some point in the 1970s, and later on it ceased to exist completely. So this is just
okay. Just I had a wee message that I think we're having some issues on YouTube, and so just to say that if you're not watching on Facebook and you're trying to watch on YouTube, that we will upload the video there after the live stream. And if you have got any questions for us, please can you put those on the Facebook chat. So Adam, so that was a little bit about the role of Trinity House, but we could maybe chat a bit about the building itself, which well, the current building was built in 1816, but there was a much older almshouse which stood on the site of the present Trinity House, which would be great if you could tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, the present building, which you can see nowadays and you can visit nowadays, replaces an earlier one, which was built on the site in 1555. It is thought that an even older convening house was built before that and destroyed in the English raids in 1544 and 1547, when much of the port of Leith was burned. Not much is known, to be honest, about the 16th century old building, other than it was touched and used as an almshouse and hospital in the 17th and 18th centuries. In the earliest known map of Leith dating 1777, Trinity House can be clearly seen. Up to 6 widows apparently were allowed to stay in the house all the time and were given food, candles, and rooms. So this is actually the information we have. The old house was made of carved stone, and it was with thatched roof. You might have seen actually some of the remnants of the house once you were walking around the house. Actually, outside here, you can see actually this photographs here now. Of these 2 carved stone panels on the exterior wall, so they are remnants of the old medieval house. They belong to the fabric of the 16th century house. One of them carries an inscription. I'm not sure if you can see it, but reading, "In the name of the Lord, ye masteries and mariners billis this house to ye poor, Anno Domini 1555." So this is what we can read here. The walls actually of the 1555 building remain under the house, and they are also remaining of the old house. They were used to accommodate Leith Grammar School until the early 18th century. Leith Grammar School later, as some of you probably know, became Leith Academy. It is one of the oldest schools in Scotland, found with its founding actually usually credited to 1560. There were records of Leith Grammar School as early as 1521, but not much is known about this really. To begin with, the school was under the control of the Kirk Session of the Southdish Parish Church. It renamed so until 1806. It is not known where the school met until 1636, when records may make reference to meeting in Trinity House. The school met there until 1710. And then there was some, it's quite complicated story, quite long story, so I'm not sure if we had enough time to actually to talk about this, but very shortly, actually, there was some disagreement between, about the rent between the church and actually and the master, so the school had to move out basically from the house. But really the history of even if you go to their webpage actually to Leith Academy basically, but the history actually goes back to this site here where we are.
So the church and Trinity House have you know, quite a close relationship. They're not just only like directly opposite each other, but the prime guilt that Trinity House raised would help to build the church in the 1480s.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the church?
Yeah, actually, yeah, the church, which stands opposite of Trinity House, has a quite long history. In fact, the foundations of the church are older actually than the previous Trinity House. But the history is very sort of interconnected. They used to pay, actually the Trinity House masters supported local parishes, local churches, and they supported this church as well. They used to pay 1/4 of the income actually to support South Leith Parish Church, and they also supported North Leith Parish Church. Later, actually, the Congregation Church actually changed the buildings. And each year, actually, in November, we have mariner service here. So all the captains, all the masters come here, Edinburgh Lord Provost, and then they march to the church. And they have a maritime ceremony actually to commemorate all merchant sailors who died during the conflicts and while serving as well. And the balcony inside the church actually is dedicated to the Trinity House Masters with our logo, actually with Trinity House logo. So whenever there are like special ceremonies or services, actually the masters go upstairs and they sit on the balcony. So the history, as you can see, is very, very interconnected. And sometimes, actually, when we do some large tours, actually, we organize combined tours, actually. So people visit us, Trinity House, and then they go to the church as well to visit the church. Mm-hmm. And here, actually, you can see on this photograph, we can maybe go back again. Yeah, this is the, you can see the Leith Academy coat of arms.
So we had a question through from Facebook. Somebody said, can you guide me into researching a family member who is a ship captain a few generations before me? I would recommend going to the National Records Scotland. And what would your advice be?
Yeah, this is the same. Yeah, I would recommend the same. Basically, we have quite a lot of hundreds of questions like this, to be honest with you. And what happens actually when Trinity House was handed over to Historic Scotland in 2004, all our records actually were transferred actually to the Register House, which is actually based on Princess Street now. So we usually send people, and as far as I know, our records are kept really in good condition, basically. But the only reason why the records were transferred actually to actually Register House, as the captains thought actually this is the best place actually open to the public, basically, and people were allowed to go and browse through the documents, basically. And we have this code, so whoever asks this question, actually, the code is GD 266, actually GD266. So this is code for
well remembered. And so if anyone is looking for the link and didn't catch that, they can email us afterwards, and we can always post it in the Facebook chat. So yeah, like Adam says, all the old minute books and archives of Trinity House are at National Records Scotland. So we chatted a bit about the old building, the Elms House, but the building that's now there on the Kirkgate dates to 1816, and this is very much reflects the golden age of Trinity House in the 19th century. So I don't know if we can have a picture come up of the master who was instrumental in building Trinity, the new Trinity House that we see today.
Yeah, this is very interesting. Yeah, this is the painting of John Hay. You can see it in Convening Room upstairs, and this is by Henry Rayburn. By the way, one of the Henry Rayburn's paintings. We have 4 Henry Rayburns here in the house, but this is John Hay. You can see his name on the front of the house, and he was the instigator of getting rid of the old house, the medieval house, and building this one. As he was the master of the house in the 19th century, early 19th century. This was the golden age where they had loads of money from the taxes, from the pilotage certificates. They had hundreds of members at this point as well. And this increase in revenue for Trinity House, particularly from pilotage, seaborne traffic in and out of Leith and the Firth of Forth was booming largely due to the demands of the war. So as you can imagine, they were really all the movement in the Port of Leith was really intensive, and they had quite a lot of money. They needed more pilots as well. And
then there was the new wet docks for Leith as well, weren't they, at the time? So Trinity House would charge the prime gilt on every cargo of stone which would come in. So they made quite a lot of money from that, which I think really annoyed the owners of the wet docks, which was the Edinburgh Council, that Trinity House was getting the money, which enabled us to build, or enabled them to build the building that we have today.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and because the old building was falling apart, actually, Trinity House requested land on the links from the city of Edinburgh to replace actually the current building instead. And the new house was designed, by the way, by Thomas Brown, the same person who designed a couple of houses in Newtown, actually. And John Hay was the master then and instigator of the demolition of the old house and building this one. They left. What happened actually? They decided to leave the old vaults. So actually, the underground of the old house is still intact actually, and you can still visit it. Actually, you could see the picture before.
And I think that's because it was being used at the time, wasn't it? It was,
the
vaults were being let commercially, so didn't want to lose that income stream, so they incorporated them into the new house.
Yeah, and they built actually this new house, and they finished actually the house in 1817. So this is just obviously later on the house was quite sort of adjusted and changed. Many different features were added actually to the house.
Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, the public can't look around Trinity House today, but you are at Trinity House, and you are in the Master's Room today, which is. Can you tell us a bit more about the Master's Room? Where are you? What are your surroundings?
Yeah, actually, just very shortly to describe. Whoever was in Trinity House has some idea actually how it looks like, but to people who never been actually to Trinity House and they want to come in the future, basically. It has actually a small room actually, which is not that small. You can see it actually behind me here, but it's called the Master's Room. It has two corridors: interior corridor, exterior corridor, and the big room upstairs called Convening Room, which is really large, huge room. But I'm sitting at the moment in the Master's Room, and this is where they meet nowadays. Actually, they used to meet upstairs when they had hundreds of members in the olden days, basically. But today they usually have quarterly meeting and monthly meetings. And there's a and just behind me here you can see this fireplace. Probably not sure if you can. Yeah, you can see it actually. Yeah, and this is called, the fireplace is called the Camperdown fireplace. And in fact, this fireplace is older, slightly older than this house. It was incorporated to this house, to the new house, after they built this house in 1870. And the name, the Camperdown fireplace, comes after the Battle of Camperdown, which took place in 1797. The big battle of the coast of Holland, small village called Camperdown. That's why all of these places are called Camperdown Park, Camperdown House as well. You wouldn't be able probably to see, but there are these different medallions here on the fireplace, and all of them, they are really relevant with some of the places actually in Edinburgh. You have Lord Nelson, George III, Lord Howe, Admiral Duncan, he was the big hero of the Camperdown battle, Queen Charlotte, and first Earl of St. Vincent. And
so Admiral Duncan, we have a portrait of Admiral Duncan in the convening room upstairs, and he was the hero of Camperdown, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, this is one of the Henry Raeburn's, by the way, paintings. And Henry Raeburn was the big hero of the Camperdown battle. He was the admiral, basically, and you can see this portrait now. He comes from Dundee, and he won the battle. He completely smashed the Dutch fleet, and Low Countries. At this point, they were sort of puppet state of French. I hope they won't be offended. And by winning this battle against the Dutch, actually, Admiral Duncan gave the signal to the French not to attack the British as well. So it's very important battle. For some reason, not sort of very well advertised, but You can see actually on this picture, actually, the interesting thing behind Admiral Duncan was actually that he lived very long. Actually, when he died, he was over 70 years old, which is really achievement. Was achievement at this time, and also he was very tall guy as well, as you can see even on this picture here.
That's why he had a full length portrait.
Yeah, and he was an honorary member of Trinity House himself as well.
So you mentioned that. Sorry.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that this is in the convening room, which is probably like the most stunning room of Trinity House.
Yeah, convening room. Actually, this is. Yeah, I would say actually this is about the hardcore of our exhibition. You can see actually in the convening room. This is where actually it's a huge room, and whoever comes to Trinity House, all our visitors, they are really surprised how large is the room actually, because the house doesn't look that large from outside really, but I would say about 40%. It occupies about 40% of the whole house really. You can see the photograph actually now. Actually, there is like big table in the middle of the room, and we have quite a lot of ship models, navigation and instrument, octans, sextants. We have some nature exhibits as well, like eardrums, narvals, and also you can see the ceiling. Now the ceiling. What happened actually when John Hay instigated building the new house, the ceiling would be plain for a couple of years, and then they got bored actually with the ceiling, and they decided to commission some money for the ceiling, and they produced this rather beautiful ceiling. You can see quite a lot of maritime features over there, like anchors, navigational instruments, globes, some sort of Neptune types as well. Great, beautiful, ornamental features as well.
Something to reflect, like how important an organization they had become.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, as you touching on the collections, the convening room is the main hub of the museum, where the majority of the collections are, like the portraits and all the things that we have on the table. So. And I think the collections are one of the most interesting aspects of Trinity House, aside from its building and history. So what are some of the highlights of the collection for you?
Yeah, I would say yes. Some of the highlights of the collection are. First of all, I would mention the stained glass, which is when you enter, actually, when you go actually through the staircase upstairs from the master's room to the convening room. You wouldn't miss to notice actually this big stained glass, big window, and this is the memorial window. Not sure we have. Yeah, we have the picture now. Yeah, and this memorial window was made actually was created by J.R. Cook, and it was made actually especially for the Trinity House to commemorate First World War sailors, and later on it was rededicated for the Second World War sailors as well. It was made in 1933, and this was a gift, in fact, by Colina Grant, which is a rather important fact. Colina Grant was the only female lady member, honorary member of Trinity House. Her father was called Mango Campbell Gibson. He was very wealthy ship owner, Gibson Line, a very wealthy ship owner in the port of Leith, and her husband was a member of the house as well. And we have her portrait upstairs. This is Colina Grant herself, basically. We have her portrait actually upstairs. She was very important person actually. I would say at some point she was more important than some of the masters of the house, and she was dealing with the charity actually matters as well. And yeah, so if you ever actually need any more sort of information about the stained glass, about Colina Grant.
So Walter Cook, who designed the window, I mean, he was very influenced by the War Memorial at Edinburgh Castle, which I think was Douglas Strachan was the designer of that, and we think that maybe he worked under him, and there's very similar features on the memorial window. These round
very
doors.
similar, actually.
Which commemorate the different things that they did during the war, the different services of the Merchant Navy.
Yeah.
So another, what other objects would you highlight? I know that one for me is the ballot box, which is used for voting.
Yeah, the ballot box. This is very interesting thing. If we have maybe a photograph of the ballot box, this would be easier to explain actually. Yeah, the ballot box, actually the voting box was made in 1799. And as you can see, it has two drawers. And you can see this big hole on the top, basically. So what would happen? You would have to put your hand inside, actually, and there is division inside. So you would vote either for yes and no. And as you can see, actually, the seats, tamarind, actually, and I can show you. Actually, I have it here on my table. How it looks like, really. Each person will be given actually these beans. You can see them probably, yeah.
Yep.
These tiny beans, yeah. And they would vote either for yes and no, and nobody obviously would be able to see, because you can't see actually if you are turning your hand for yes or no. And I have to say, actually, the box is still in use. Each time when they elect new members, actually, they transport the box from the corridor actually to the master's room actually.
And those seats you were showing us, well, the beans. What are they? They're not coffee beans, are they?
No, we thought at some point when we were guiding our visitors, we would actually say this is coffee beans, but they are not really coffee beans. They are tamarind. This was researched we gave it to the botanic gardens actually to research, and not sure you can see again, but.
So probably brought back as like an exotic memento by one of the masters for voting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Quite a lot of objects, in fact, were brought from their voyages as some sort of souvenirs, really.
So I know that the masters of Trinity House were particularly involved in the visit of George IV to Edinburgh, and we've got quite a few objects related to that.
Yeah, we have quite a lot of objects actually related to the George IV, and this is quite important because his visit. This was the George IV visit to Scotland. Was the first visit by the reigning monarch at this time since Charles II. And Sir Walter Scott orchestrated actually the royal visit, and landing at Leith was chosen by Scott for its historical romantic connections, despite it being too shallow to admit the royal yacht. Trinity House, obviously, they were responsible for pilotage. They were involved also in the practical matter of ensuring the safe navigation of the Royal Squadron in the Scottish waters, and you can see this picture.
Yeah, we have a print, I think, of
the
landing at Leith.
Yeah,
I think it's Lizard's print, wasn't it? So it's one particular view of the flotillas coming in.
Yeah. And there were plenty of people who wanted to see the king landing in the harbor. So actually, they had to organize somehow the visit, and they issued tickets. This is still the picture.
So Trinity House was very integral in the organization of this, wasn't it? I think they all had like uniforms made, especially, and Captain Duncan, was it, had a special little memorial badge made as well.
Yeah, the tickets were issued also, and maybe the next picture we could get the next picture actually. This ticket actually is for a seat on the pier, and is for the rake platform seating, which was located across the harbor in front of the customs house, and the rear of the ticket shows the ticket holder was entitled to a bottle of sherry.
It's obviously quite a jolly affair.
Yeah, I know.
But so the rake platform seating, I think, was for the more common people, whereas the masters would have been over the other side with a better view.
Yeah.
So there's also quite a few objects related to the whaling industry in the collection that we could pick out. In particular, Peter Wood, I think, was a central figure.
Yeah, Peter Wood, he was a member of the house as well, and he was one of the major figures actually in the port of Leith, dealing with the whaling. Actually, he had quite large whaling ships fleet, more than 20 ships basically, and he would be besides of Christian Salvason, he would be one of the major whalers actually. And you can see this photograph. And by the way, this is by Henry Raeburn as well. As I mentioned,
of our 4 Raeburns.
Yeah, we have four Raeburns, yeah. And he's holding, actually, you can see this stick. This stick is made of the narval tusk, and I can show you actually now this object. This is the narval, and it's sitting on the table, usually on the table upstairs, so people can see it. Once they
so the narwhal was a whale.
This was type of the way. This was like some sort of unicorn, really. Only male had ones, and as far as I know, they still exist in the North Sea, basically, in small numbers around Greenland and this area, North Canada as well. And so this one was converted into walking stick, and it's painted on this Raeburn painting, which is rather really amazing, fantastic thing to have.
Great provenance.
Yeah, and stick actually painted by Henry Raeburn. And another thing is this harpoon. This is connected with the whaling as well. Yeah, you can see probably from 1823. Flynn.
So this has got the name of the whaler on it, R. Flynn, engraved on it. So presumably we could get it back once it had been fired.
Yeah.
And Flynn was on the Alpheus of Peterhead, is that right? Because I think it's got the ship's name on the other side.
Yeah, you can see on this side.
So and we know that the Alpheus was crushed by ice off West Greenland in 1828. I'm not sure what date's on the harpoon itself. So
another object actually involved with the whaling. This is rather delicate actually. Penguin. It's carved from the whale's tooth. And
so some people might recognize this. This is very Trinity House.
Yeah, some people might recognize it. Yeah, we even used to have postcards actually with the wheat penguin, and as you can see, it's very beautiful actually. And this was probably brought by the sailor, by the whaler actually, and carved by the whaler actually, associated with Christian Salvason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's a 20th century object. So that's more to do with the later Antarctic whaling.
Yeah, that's later. Yeah, because it's worth to mention actually they would go to the Arctic actually, and then they switched actually to Antarctic later on. There is even a place called the Port of Leith in South Georgia actually, which was part of this big whaling actually industry, and they brought actually. The interesting thing actually, you can see nowadays whenever you visit actually Edinburgh Zoo, you can see the penguins and the wee penguins parades as well, gentle penguins, and these penguins are the next generations of the penguins brought by some of the whalers actually from South Georgia. So this is interesting thing, and we have also an egg upstairs in the convening room, and this was actually brought by the whalers with them when they were transporting the penguins. So this is interesting. And the station, actually, the Port of Leith, if I'm not wrong, actually, this was sold to the Japanese in the 1980s, and it ceased to exist completely. So whaling was really a big part of the sailing of the history of Leith, and Trinity House masters were well involved with
Well, unfortunately, I know we've been having a few issues over on YouTube, and apologise for that. And I think that's why we haven't had as many questions through as we would like. But I'd like to just thank you all for tuning in today to hear about Trinity House. And hopefully you are watching this afterwards on YouTube. If you have any questions for Adam or myself, please do leave us a comment and we'll answer them as soon as we can. You can also email us any questions directly to trinityhouse@hess.scot, particularly if you've got a very specific question about your family members or about Leith. You can also find more information about Trinity House on the Hess website and explore the collections that we have on the website. And there's lots of other videos if you want to watch them more about Trinity House on the Hess YouTube channel. Finally, we have a couple of surveys about Doors Open Day. That would be grateful if you could fill in for us, and you can find the links to this in the chat. So all that remains is for me to say thank you very much to Adam for all the information he's given us today, and we hope to see you at Trinity House when we reopen. Thank you.
Thank you.